Okay, hello everyone. I am Melissa Stewart, Member Relations Specialist at HathiTrust. Welcome to today's webinar on getting started with the Accessible Text Request Service. So here are the topics we're going to go through today. We're going to talk about what the Accessible Text Request Service is, or ATRS, as you will hear it referred to throughout this webinar, how to register, how to promote ATRS at your library, and then we're going to have a panel with Sproul Harder from Harvard University and Patricia Baird from University of Iowa, about how they use ATRS at their libraries. And then there should be plenty of time for Q&A after that. You will notice that this webinar is being recorded. For the Q&A, please use the Q&A function in Zoom webinar, and you can use the chat for just general chatting between participants, or if you need to get a hold of one of us, or just for general conversation. Alrighty, so now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jessica Rohr to talk about ATRS.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm Jessica Rohr, and I'm the Communications and Member Engagement Specialist here at HathiTrust. And I am going to share with you kind of the roots of the Accessible Text Request Service, talk a little bit about the benefits and how some libraries are using it today. So the commitment to accessibility is built into our very foundation. So when HathiTrust was formed in 2008, in addition to our commitment to preservation and shared infrastructure and access, we identified that making these texts accessible to those with print disabilities was a core part of our service and our mission. So that is something that we have been doing ever since the beginning. So we are continuing on today. Next slide. So what is the Accessible Text Request Service? So the Accessible Text Request Service provides eligible users with access to any title in the HathiTrust collection. So that is 18 million items in the collection, which amounts to approximately 8 million individual titles. So regardless of copyright, an eligible user can access a title in HathiTrust. It's permitted through copyright law, and the way it actually works is, and Melissa will get into this a little bit more, is the provider on campus is able to download a digital copy of the title selected that's accessible for different adaptive technologies such as screen readers. Next slide. ATRS is available to member libraries only. So this is very much a benefit of being a member of HathiTrust. It's included in your annual costs, so that's not an extra fee. The eligibility is determined by you, the library, and your campus. However, your campus might identify eligible students or faculty or staff with print disabilities. That would be not something we decide, that's something from member libraries. But it includes anything from, visual impairment to any type of physical disability that might affect someone's capacity or ability to interact with a physical item. So it really is something that can serve your whole community and increase the commitment of your own institution to accessibility. Next slide. So some things that we have heard and learned about over the past couple of years in terms of the benefits of using ATRS on your campus. What we have found is that oftentimes ILL, librarians or those working in the Physical Disabilities Office, or excuse me, Office of Disabilities, find that there are items in HathiTrust that are not available through other providers. So this is scholarly content, so titles that are available in most North American college and research libraries. That is something you can get through ATRS, which is really, really exceptional for students, who are working in scholarly areas. So this is older content. This is content that is rare and not available in other digital formats through other providers. So it also eliminates, or at least minimizes, the amount of time that your staff have to process and create locally accessible text. So there's a lot of benefit. Again, this is included in your membership, so it's worth taking advantage of. Next slide. There are, of course, terms of service. I won't go into details here, but really this is something that is a shared responsibility. So we provide access to designated providers on your campus, and along with that comes an agreement, the kind of honor code of abiding by copyright laws and making sure that the eligible users on your campus do so as well. Those kind of agreements are between you and your community, but it really is a shared responsibility among us all to ensure that we can continue to provide this service to those with print disabilities. And lastly, this is just a brief note from one of our providers, Oxford University, emphasizing again that HathiTrust has a broad range of tools and materials that would be impossible to source otherwise, and we would need to produce our own copy in-house. So again, think about that. Think about the resources and staff time that you may be spending on providing this material, and think about how ATRS could support your community. I believe I'm turning it back over to Melissa.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about how to register for ATRS. So how to register for ATRS is that to identify who at your institution is going to be your service provider. So you can authorize up to 3 service providers, either from your library or from your campus disability services office. And in order to do that, there is a form on our website to fill out. And each provider needs to fill out the registration form and sign it. It also needs to be signed by an approver, or an authorized representative is what it officially says on the form. That person should be either at AUL or director level. We also ask that our service providers are set up to use multi-factor or 2-factor authentication to sign in to HathiTrust. If you don't currently have multi-factor authentication on your campus, which most do now, we ask that you have a static IP address set up, which is difficult for many institutions. So hopefully you use multi-factor to set up authentication. So again, once you complete the registration form, you submit that to support@hathitrust.org. Those tickets will be assigned to me, and I will register you for the service by entering your information from the form into our system. Then the service providers will get a link through an email to complete the process, and then you will have ATRS access to HathiTrust. We ask that then you promote the service on your website so that your students and staff know how to request the service. The authorized representative, or that approver at AUL or director level, will get an email annually. So will the service provider, letting them know that they will need to renew, so that access renews annually. And there's a link. I will be sharing these slides as well as the recording with participants afterwards. So here's what it looks like for when a person is registered as a service provider for ATRS. So To log in, if you're logged into HathiTrust, you will see in the corner this little, looks like a person with a little gray circle around it. You click that, and then this pop-up will come up, and you can toggle then from just regular member access to accessible text request service access. And it also lists here our terms of service again. You click submit, and then you will have access to everything in HathiTrust regardless of copyright, so that you can download the text that you are looking for and distribute it to the patron. So remember to check HathiTrust when you receive a request from a student. Include HathiTrust in your documentation about services, and some of our members have a form that they use. Some of them include in their ILL form to fill out for ILL. They have a separate entry that a qualified student can use for accessible materials. So you might consider that. Here are some links I put together of some institutions, instructions that they put on their website, how to access ATRS services. So those are just some nice, and again, I will share these, the slide deck, so that you can have a list to these links in case you would like to add something similar to your website. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and then start the panel. I want to ask, since we're at kind of a break point, if we have any questions so far.
We do. We have a couple questions coming in. We can answer these. What are the requirements for the management and deletion of downloaded PDF files?
Yeah, so we do ask that after the files are distributed to the patron, that they are deleted. That is in our terms of service, that those works are, it comes with a cover sheet on it that says that this is a copyrighted title and it is only for use for the designated patron. And so that copy should be destroyed. You should delete your copy after you've distributed it to the patron.
I think similarly, next couple questions, also Caroline Brown. How is misuse managed and reported, and what are the consequences of misuse for the university and patron? And I
Again,
honestly don't think this has come up before, but
yeah, I
yeah.
am not aware that we've had a misuse of ATRS reported. I mean, we do leave it up to the member institution, that again, that authorized um, representative, the approver that signs. I mean, that's kind of saying that they are responsible for that service provider. And if that provider is, misusing the service, then they need to contact us and have their access removed. If we were to discover that somebody was misusing the service, then their access would be removed.
Here's one. So you will need up to 3 providers and 1 approver.
Oh,
Melissa, sorry.
yes,
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
that's right. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to send out one form with like, 3 blanks and one, but it got it caused confusion. So it's just easier that even though there's only one approver, that each provider fills out their own form.
And this is a question from Laura. When we subscribed to HathiTrust about 10 years ago, we signed up to the Accessible Text program, Request program. At that point, I think we only had 1 user permitted. Is that correct? I'm wondering if we've had the 3-user option all along that I didn't take advantage of.
I can't
That's
see what institution you're from. So I wouldn't be able to, I can follow up with you with that question. Oh, UMass. I would need to follow up with that question because I would have to go into the system and look up how many people you had set up.
All right, that's all we have at the moment.
Okay, great. Then we can get started with our panel. Sproul and Patricia, would you like to introduce yourselves? I'll start with Sproul here. Oops, I can't hear you.
Great.
There we go.
Okay, thank you for having me here today. I'm Sproul Harder. I'm an Associate Director of Access Services in Harvard Library. My relationship with accessibility, I have a great interest in it, but also within my portfolio is our digital course reserves program. So a lot of the accessibility requests I get are tied into the classes that students are taking. We have used this service since 2016.
Great, thank you. And Patricia?
Hi, I'm Patricia Baird, University of Iowa Libraries. I am the operations lead in the Interlibrary Loan and Delivery Services Unit. So I kind of work behind the scenes. On campus, we have an Office of Student Disability Services and an Office for Faculty and Staff Disability Services. And we work closely with those two offices. They're the ones that will determine the eligibility of the patron, and they lead the patron to the libraries. We also have a library liaison to the Office of Student Disability Services. So that's kind of how our library connects with students that need this service. We've been using the ATRS since 2018. And I think that's it for now.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to start with our first question. I'm going to start with Patricia. Tell us about the landscape on your campus for serving students with disabilities, and how are you aware of and keep up with the needs of this particular community?
Okay, so as I said, the landscape is pretty much the Office of Student Disability Services. So the students are expected to register with that office, and then the office, that office actually assists students that have textbooks that they need textbooks to be accessible. So that office takes care of that. The libraries takes care of any supplemental study material that they might need. And we are working closely with that office.
Sproul, how about you at Harvard?
Sure. So Harvard is a large institution, so with several schools, and we have a University Disability Resources office that serves as the central resource for students, faculty, and staff related disability-related information and procedures. They work with faculty and staff for accommodations, but within each school, there's a local disability coordinator, and that position is the person that students work with to make their accommodation. So students need to work with that person on the accommodation. And the LDC is knowledgeable about the resources across the university, so can make sure that the student is aware, depending on their needs, who they can work with. And one of the great resources we have on campus is an assistive technology center, and they provide education on assisted technology, but will also remediate course material that students need that isn't accessible. And they do very specific needs tailors it to an individual. So if the person needs electronic or embossed braille, they have the ability to do that. The university also implemented a digital accessibility policy in 2019 that focused on public-facing websites, but then in 2023, it included the digital material that's posted and used for teaching. So we've seen an increase in requests because of the digital accessibility policy. So I work closely with the staff in ATC, and they contact me when a student who was referred to them needs material. Um, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. I'm going to take this back
Mhm.
to you.
Sure.
What types of students are you serving? Undergraduates, graduates? What kinds of requests do you get?
Yep. Yep. We serve both undergraduate and graduate students. Let's see. This semester we've had 30 requests that were just for HathiTrust. And this semester there are about 15 students who are using the disability services. And the types of material we get generally is anything that someone could be teaching with. It's really interesting. I personally do the downloads, and it's really interesting just to see the different subject matter that students are studying in class as well as doing their own personal research. It gets very busy at the beginning of each semester. September and February are biggest times for requests. And I just got 2 requests today, both Hathi. So this must be a student who's trying to finish up a paper because classes end soon.
How about you, Patricia? Is the landscape or the student body that's using the services? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's offered to both undergraduates and graduates. When I looked at our registrations over the past years, I really expected to see more graduate students, but we've actually registered more undergrads for this service. It seems to be that undergrads sign up for the service and then don't use it. Whereas graduate students, every one of them that signs up has been pretty prolific in using the service. I think our most prolific patron requested, he was in French and Italian. He was a grad student studying French literature, and I think we got 74 books through the ATRS for him. Very grateful to have that service.
That's great.
I'm going to stick with you, Patricia. Can you walk us through then a typical request? What is the process? Who is involved besides you? And, how does the item go from request to the patron?
Sure. So we're doing this through our interlibrary loan department, and we use ILLiad at the University of Iowa. So we're doing it through our ILLiad. The patron first has to register in ILLiad, and they have an option to choose delivery for print disability. So if they select that option, then staff, usually myself or my colleagues, will go in to approve that student. And in order to approve them for the service, we have to check back with the Office of Student Disability Services to be sure that the student has been registered. That's kind of our safeguard to make sure that the student is supposed to get this service. So if the student is confirmed to be registered with that office, then ILLiad will route their requests into a special queue for processing. So I know right away that these are requests that are being requested for a student with a print disability. We use our course management software at the University of Iowa to deliver these texts. So I will then go in and create a course in our course management software with myself as the instructor and then the student as the student. And we're the only 2 that have access to that. Next thing I would do would be to go to HathiTrust and look for the titles that the student has requested. If they're there, I will download them, and then I will just upload them into the course software system, and the PDFs are already OCR'd, so they're all ready to go. I just have to attach a copyright sheet, and then I notify the student or the patron that their book is there. So that's our procedure.
Great. What about you, Sproul, at Harvard?
It's really interesting, Patricia. Here at Harvard, I primarily work with the assistive technology staff. Students who've been referred to them with a disability are registered with them, and they work closely together at the beginning of a semester, reviewing syllabi and searching for the material. So then a request will be emailed to a general email box, and I search for it in Hathi and download it. I'll send it to the ATC contact person, and they will further remediate the file if it's needed, depending on the student's needs. And they use a Google folder that's limited to just the student and the ATC staff who can see the material, and they post it there for the student. Students sometimes will contact me directly if they've gotten the accessibility email, and I check with ATC to make sure that that student was referred to them, and then I can give them the file directly if that's what they need.
Great. This is so interesting, both different processes here. So back to Patricia, like what stands out about HathiTrust service compared to other providers of accessible content? And are there, what about HathiTrust stands out, and or what are some alternative things that you use?
Okay, alternative things that I've used in the past before we started using ATRS is just basically I would borrow a book or use our own copy, and I'd have students scan the entire thing. And then I would have to run it through AbbyFind software and then post it. So this has just been just such a time saver for me. The other thing that I would occasionally do would be to see if there was an ebook out there, and ask our acquisitions department to purchase the ebook for the patron.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Sproul?
Oh, yeah. What stands out for me with the service as the library representative who's downloading, I really do like the authentication process. So I'm not tied to an IP, which means I can be at home. If I get a request, I can fulfill it right there. I don't have to just be tied to my office. And I really like that I can download the material myself. With some other providers, Internet Archive, for example, they're pretty quick turnaround, but I do have to email them to ask for a file. We also work with our licensed resource providers, the vendors, if we need a file from them, and that can sometimes take a while. So I think it's great to be able to get the files ourselves.
I would imagine that there are sometimes things that the service is not able to provide. How could we as a HathiTrust community improve the library experience for your users and patrons with print disabilities? Do you have any common troubleshooting questions or complaints from patrons? We're airing our dirty laundry here. We just want to hear it.
Actually, we haven't received any complaints. The files scanning quality has for the most part is pretty good, and sometimes the files are already have bookmarks in them, so there's not much more that needs to be done, and that's helpful. Before running it through AbbyFind Reader, I'm told that they need to adjust the image resolution, but nothing really that stands out. And students are really appreciative of the work that we do and that we're able to get this material for them.
How about you, Patricia?
I just really like the speed at which we can get the material. I mean, it takes a little bit to download the file, especially if they're large books, but I love being able to provide our patrons with an entire book within a day, so that's just been really nice.
Great, thank you both so much. I think that we have time to answer some questions, and it looks like we have
Yeah, we do.
some questions in
We
there.
have some. Gonna go all the way back to the beginning. So is eligibility determined based on registration with the Office of Disability Services, or are there other ways that some institutions are determining eligibility? Not every student who has a disability registers with the Office of Disability, so I wonder if others use different ways. I think maybe Patricia Sproul, you might have an answer, or Melissa.
For the most part, I wouldn't give it to someone if they haven't registered with the disability office and have an accommodation that matches this need.
That's true for us as well.
Yeah, I would think we as HathiTrust don't provide any guidelines or as a rule censor what an institution is doing to determine eligibility. So I think that that question you might check with your disability services office and ask them what they would recommend doing if you receive those requests. Oops, I can't hear you, Jessica. Your microphone is.
There we go. What was your timeline for testing and implementation? So this might be Sproul and Patricia, and that was a minute ago, I think, for both of your institutions.
Oh, right, for like testing. Oh, I
Yeah.
don't really recall testing. Once I figured out how to download, since I'm the one using the interface to do that, there was just me doing it and it worked. This service did open up an opportunity for me though to reach out to disability services, which I hadn't before, and get to know people across the university who serve the needs of students with disabilities. That's been really helpful, and it's allowed me to learn a lot and also to promote the library and any of the services that we have.
Right. I'm like Sproul. There really wasn't any testing. I just went in and downloaded the PDF, and then I would do like a keyword search to make sure that it's machine readable, that it can find text, and then I just delivered it. Have not heard any complaints.
What analytics related to the service do you collect, if any?
From a HathiTrust, oh, maybe you guys do. From HathiTrust, we really don't very much. I mean, we do have an interface that if somebody requests, I can go in and see, look at a provider and see how many things they have downloaded over a course of time, but we don't track what was downloaded and we have no way of knowing whether those materials were all downloaded for one patron or if they were individually for individual patrons. We don't track that at HathiTrust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recently updated the process so that I could track, and it goes in, the email I receive goes into a LibAnswers, and then so I can track the statistics there, and I'll put a tag that says if something's Hathi, because all accessibility requests for library material, so it's not just a Hathi type book. It could be something that we have to scan, or it's a library license resource and we have to reach out to the vendor. So I have little tags that I use, Hathi if it's a Hathi book, so I can see how many were specifically there. And then it also gives me obviously other statistics. But what's nice about having it go into the LibAnswers is that I have a number of backups, so I can go on vacation and other people can be involved in getting the request moved along. So here at Harvard, since you brought up like having up to 3 contacts people, we have 2, and they're both in the library versus someone in disability services.
How about you, Patricia?
Yeah,
Do you-
we have not been tracking that.
Got it. Once confirmed by the Disability Resource Office, how do you manage incoming requests? Web form, email?
Mhm. I have a dedicated email that goes into LibAnswers, and I have asked the people who request, it's coming from the ATC staff, to put the title as the subject, and that really helps me if I have a long list of things I'm going through to just keep in mind for myself where I am and what still needs to be done. I've never been overwhelmed with the number of requests. So the ATC has other sources that they check as well for copies. So it isn't as though I'm getting every single request that the student might need for their course. I'm getting the ones that they couldn't find in other places, or because Hathi is it's integrated in our catalog. So if I look up a title, there'll be a little link to that book in Hathi if it's there. And that is helpful too. So sometimes ATC will give me not only the link, but also then say it's in Hathi. So I don't have to do anything except just go to the link. So
How
Yeah,
about you, Patricia?
and as I explained earlier, all of our requests come through ILLiad, so that's how we manage the requests.
Here's another question for you, Patricia. When are the courses created for the file delivery deleted? I think, yeah, you described how you do that.
Okay, so the course, I generally I don't create a course until I get a request that needs to be uploaded to the course. Then I'll go ahead and ask for a course to be created for me. In the past, I've just gone ahead and created courses when people registered for the service, but then they sat there empty. Some people would register and then never use the service. So that's how that happens.
Is this open to faculty or staff who may have a disability accommodation? I'll ask you, Melissa. And
Yeah, I mean, we do, as for Hati Trust, we do say that you can offer this service is for not just students, but also faculty and staff that have print disabilities.
Yes, and we've done some for some faculty members.
yep, same.
this is for Sproul and or Patricia. So how long did it take you to get your process for providing files all set up and working well?
It was, for me, it was iterative. I went into it with a vision of how I thought it was going to work. And then as I talked with the LDCs and ATC and learned more of what they did, it kind of made me rethink. And so just this year, I've rethought some of it too, so that now it goes into LibAnswers. So it helps because I, networked and met people. And so I've got a pretty good idea of who to reach out to.
And for me, it was already in place 13 years ago when I started in interlibrary loans. So I don't know who set it up, but they did a good job of thinking it through ahead of time. And of course, 13 years ago, we didn't use ATRS. We did our own scanning and OCRing of materials.
Here's another one. If people at a local institution do further text remediation, is there any way to return that book with further remediation back to HathiTrust so that it's available for future requesters.
Man, I wish
Right.
there was. I really do. Really do. But right now there is not, unfortunately.
Is there an alternative process if an item isn't found in HathiTrust? I would imagine that answer is yes, but
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll scan a
Yeah.
book if we need to, or Internet Archive, or reach out to our e-resources and ask for a file.
And we'll scan it as well. That's our second option, is to just do the scanning ourselves.
ATRS allows us to access all of HathiTrust, is that correct? Not just the items we've contributed or are in the public domain. Melissa?
Yes, that is
Sure.
correct. So that's the ATRS providers have the highest level of access that is possible for HathiTrust. They can access everything in the collection, regardless of copyright, regardless of whether or not their institution contributed that item. They can access everything.
Have there been any issues with using ILLiad to manage requests? I think this is a Patricia question.
The only issues are when our patrons initially register for the service, and we do have quite a few that select that service and they are not registered with the Office of Student Disability Services. I think they just get curious because we just have a drop down option for them to choose that. And we actually say on our form, by selecting this option, you are verifying that you are registered with the Office of Student Disability Services. But I think they get curious or they don't know what they're checking. So when those come through, then sometimes they go into my queue for the print disabilities, and I usually don't start working on anything until I've verified with Student Disability Services that the patron has been registered. Otherwise, it's a little bit of a waste of time.
Yeah.
But that's the only issue that I can think of with ILLiad. And I use ILLiad to kind of track it as it goes along, and then I use ILLiad to send the notification to the patron that the text is available.
Ends up being kind of a follow-up to that, Patricia. Why can you not provide the file directly in the patron's ILLiad account instead of setting up a course?
Well, this is the way it was set up when I started, so I don't know the reason for that, but I do know that our files are hosted and they remain on the server for 1 month and then they're deleted automatically. So I think the thinking is that the patron may need to use it longer than that. And we're looking for a secure place to store the file.
Is there a plan for HathiTrust to eventually make this service self-serve? For example, give the student access to the accessible text directly instead of having the library staff or librarian mediate the access to the individual items.
You know, we talk about it. There has been a lot of discussion about that over the years. There are a couple of barriers to us being able to provide that service directly to patrons. And one is identification issues. There are privacy issues for, people would have to share identities of those individuals with us in order to be able to provide that direct access. And we don't really, so we don't really want to store that students' information as a rule. And there would be an issue with, privacy concerns there. So that's a big one that we haven't figured out how to overcome. The other one is in some of our user research with print disabled users, we have found that they have a hard time sometimes navigating the HathiTrust interface themselves to be able to find the items they need. And they've told us that it's much easier for them to actually go to a disability service provider at the library on their campus, or just order those materials from ILL and have them delivered to them. I mean, we still do talk about it and think about it, but some of those things we would have to figure out in order to be able to provide that service directly to patrons.
This, I think, could go to either one of you, Sproul or Patricia. Do you use Bookshare or Access Text Network to obtain accessible materials, if not in HathiTrust or Internet Archive or e-resources?
I don't personally, the library doesn't, but the Assistive Technology Center staff do.
I don't either. And I don't know what our student disability services do.
I think these are similar kind of follow-up questions. Do either of you publish anticipated wait times for document delivery? Not sure if that's specific to
No.
ATRS or.
No, because it's usually done in the same day. Generally, with any accessibility requests I get, I do tell the ATC person who made the request where I'm getting it from. So, you know, we've requested it from our vendor, or I found it in Internet Archive. I'll send that to you soon. You know, once I receive it, I can send it on. And then if it's Hathi, it's the same day.
Yeah, and I think we have a disclaimer on our site that does say it may take several days. I'm really happy when I can get it through ATRS and deliver it within a day. But if we have to scan something, it could take several weeks even.
I think this final question here is for Patricia. Are the students noted in ILLiad as DRS confirmed? I suppose that's disability registered student, maybe.
Yes, there is a location in ILLiad where they're selecting their pickup library, one of our branch libraries or the main library. And if they register as a student with a disability, then that is their pickup library. So that's how we know.
That's cool. All right, those are the only questions that we have here. I think we're almost exactly at time, but we do have at least 30 seconds. If anybody else on the call has a question for Sproul or Patricia or Melissa. Here's one. An issue we had accessing some titles from the HathiTrust is quality. Some files aren't clean enough. They are underlined or things like that. Are you guys working on a better quality control? Always. We really are always trying to remediate texts when we're able to. I would say that that is something that we have been concerned about in terms of OCR, or sometimes the kind of defacement like you're describing. I would say if you run into those, to report them to us, because we then work with the contributing library to see if we can get those quality issues remediated. But so thank you. And yes, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording, but we can stay on for a few more minutes if anybody has any questions that they did not want to ask while we're recording. Also, I will again be posting this on our YouTube channel as soon as it is ready.